This is Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom. Words on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. I trust today this will be like a vitamin or a supplement for your mind and heart. And wherever you receive podcasts from, would you please subscribe to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom? Leave a rating and a brief written review. It will enable other excellent people just like you to be able to locate this podcast. Today I want to talk about some of the leaders who have influenced me. Now, we all have different definitions of leaders, and sometimes it's very difficult to see ourselves in that position. But there are a lot of people who have poured into our lives, each and every one of us, and have made a significant impact in our lives. I think of family, including my little grandmother, who really poured herself into me and instilled within me certain values and lifelong lessons. I think of educators, I think of pastors, professors, colleagues, thought leaders at various stages of my life who really poured into my life. Some of them knew they were doing that, were very intentional about doing that. Some really weren't aware, and there would even be a few of them that I never met. But by listening to them, hearing them speak at seminars, reading their books, reading their blogs, listening to their podcasts, they have had a significant impact on my life. We all need these kinds of people, for these are the people who really keep us grounded, really help define for us what's valuable, what's important, what are some things that we can let go, and what are the significant areas of life and what are the significant things in life that we really need to attend to and to pour ourselves into. The most that I can say about all of them, maybe the best thing rather that I can say about all of them, is they led by example. The earliest people who influenced me were not people who had written books, ever appeared in a movie or a television program, and were never interviewed by anyone. They led by their example. I was able to see their lives up close and personal and saw that though they were a human being subject to the transitory events of life, they really led by example. That's a great place for us to stop right now and ask ourselves this: are people leading and are we following people's example today? And more importantly, let's bring it home to us. What kind of an example are we leaving for our children, our grandchildren, our colleagues, our neighbors, those who are watching us? That your skills will grow and develop as you learn from others. It was from those early leaders in my life that I learned to develop trust in the people who were leading me. Now, has everyone who's ever been in a position of authority over me always done the right thing? Absolutely not, just as you and I have not always gone through life flawlessly. I also discovered these people are inspirational. My grandmother was totally blind, dropped out of school in the 9th grade, yet was very wise and never gave up and had a positive attitude, was deeply spiritual, and really was an inspirational figure. My personal trainer at the YMCA, Lisa, is a person who was involved in a horrific automobile accident in which she lost a leg. And yet she is an overcomer and she is an inspirational figure. And all of us have those kinds of people that, because of what they have been able to overcome, the challenges that they met in life, they serve today as an inspirational. They're also very motivational. The two people that I just mentioned motivated me because I thought if they were able to accomplish and are able to accomplish all that they're able to accomplish with not everything working perfectly in their lives, who am I to give up? Who am I to say I can't do those things? And so they are motivators and they're encouragers. Even if they don't know they're encouraging you, by just observing them, you realize they have a lot to tell us. I have to say this. because this does not seem to be prevalent in leadership literature today, is I'm thinking all of the people who really influenced me were likable. Now, before I go any further, I was just mentioning the other day of a leader that was in my life when I was in my 20s, who was a very significant leader. And this other person who was around my same age and was there at the same time did not have the same experience or appreciation for that leader. He saw other things that I didn't see, and he would not even agree that the person was likable. But I found the person to be extremely approachable, very likable. Now, was he no nonsense? Absolutely. Did he have high expectations? Yes. But I found him to be likable. So always remember, the leaders that you have gotten great benefit from may not be the same, others may not feel the same way about that. And those that you think are likable, others will say the opposite. But one important leadership trait is you cannot allow the opinion of others about people cloud your view. I have made a decision years ago that I'm not going to form my opinion of someone by what you tell me about them solely. I am going to go by my own opinion and my own experiences. There are leaders in life, said Simon Sinek, and then there are those that really lead. Anyone can be a leader by the value and virtue of their position. But if you go above and beyond and simply become a leader and then become an effective leader, and the people I'm talking about who have influenced my life were effective leaders. I would say about all of them, from my childhood on, they didn't necessarily verbalize it, but they had an absolutely continuous commitment to improvement and excellence. I can remember from the earliest time of my youth, my grandmother saying to me, a job worth doing is worth doing well. Commit to excellence. Don't cut corners. Don't just go through the motion. I think another thing that I have learned from leaders who have been an influence in my own life is they took responsibility. They weren't always looking for someone to blame when things didn't work out. That seems to be the order of the day today. Don't take responsibility. Everything in your life is somebody else's fault, and they refuse to take responsibility or ownership. I think they were always out in front, these leaders who influenced me. They were always not saying to us, well, go do it and do that. They led the way. I think those are the kinds of leaders who have lasting influence. I learned from many of these example leaders who greatly influenced my life to this very moment is they stuck with it. They were resilient. Everyone has and faces problems. Everyone has difficulties and even setbacks. There are even times when everything around them seems to crumble and fall. And yet they stick with it. They work through the rubble. They get up, dust themselves off, and keep moving forward. The word that's used commonly today is the word resilient. They were just overcomers. They didn't give up. Perhaps you're going through a really difficult place right now and you wonder, is it really worth the cost? Don't give up. It's too soon for you to give up. We need you, and you're going to learn so many valuable lessons through the skill set of resilience. And not only that, remember there are others, whether it's your children, your spouse, your family, your friends, the people at work who are watching you, and they're wanting you to show them how do you get through a tough time. I think I'm going to insert something here that I never really thought about much when I was thinking of those leaders who influenced me, especially those who influenced me years ago. But as I become more and more familiar with emotional intelligence, I think they had it before there was a book written or even the concept was being discussed. They had a self-awareness. They knew who they were. They had empathy. They could feel for others. They were able to self-regulate. These are the kinds of leaders who really lead the way. Every great leader has to be passionate about what they're doing, passionate about life. My grandmother, a very spiritual person, she was passionate about her relationship with God and the fact that nothing in her life was wasted because God would redeem all things. Leaders and colleagues of mine who have influenced my life have been passionate. They know what they're doing. They know who they are. They know what they're about, and they just continue to work through it. I think another thing that I can remember about the leaders who influenced me was their patience. And working with me probably helped them to develop a PhD in patience. But they weren't those who just readily snapped at you and called you names. They were patient and even long-suffering. I think they always had a bias for action. At the end of the day, there's a lot of talk, and many times that's about all of there is. And there are people who have meetings to decide all sorts of things, but then leave the meeting with almost a complete failure to implement and a failure to do something. You may be under the mistaken idea that you were hired where you presently are employed because of what you know and your degrees. That may have gotten you in the door, but you and I are there because we have to accomplish something. We have to do something. The leaders who have greatly influenced me were also very humble. They weren't haughty. They didn't have a higher opinion of themselves than was warranted. You have to have some self-respect and you have to have good opinion. But they also were humble and knew that everything that comes to them in life, comes from the hand of their Creator and through work and a lot of people working with you and helping you. I also discovered that the leaders who most greatly influenced me in my life were people of integrity. Their word was their bond. If they said it, you could believe it. You could literally go to the bank with it. They weren't two-faced. They didn't say one thing here and something somewhere else. They were people of integrity. And when you lose your integrity, it's very, very difficult to come back from that. A great leader, and the ones who've influenced me, were very good at problem solving. There's a point at that when a problem first presents itself, we wonder, how are we going to work through this? How are we going to come out of this? How are we going to get past all of this? But there's something about leaders that seizes them, and they seek to look at a problem from all directions. They get input from others, and they believe they are there to solve the problem. Too many leaders try to pass the problem off to the next generation, to the next group that's going to follow them. You are where you are today for a reason, and one of the significant reasons is to be a problem solver. Find the problem and find the solutions. You won't always get it right, but you will get credit for being someone who's trying to find your way forward and trying to get out of a particular difficult situation. I would also have to say that the leaders who have greatly impacted my life were people who were good listeners. You've heard me confess enough on this podcast over the many episodes that listening is not my default. I'm a talker by default. But as I've gotten older, I've learned that I never really learned anything by talking, but I've learned a lot by listening. And I probably didn't catch that lesson as readily as I should have. And so I'm wanting to give you my benefit of my non-learning is early on, as soon as you can, learn to be a good listener. Learn to get their perspective, hear their viewpoint. It may, in fact, not change the way you feel or operate or see things, but it will give you great insight into what their thinking is. So really develop empathetic listening, and listening, not just hearing them audibly with your ears, but listening to understand, to gain their insights that they may have, and maybe to help fill in some holes that are in your perspectives. It'll be wonderful. I also found that the people who had great influence on me, because of all of the things that I've mentioned, they were just very motivational. either because of their personality or their life skills, their life experiences, the things that had happened to them. It was just that when I was in their presence or watching or observing them, you just felt like, I can do this. I can be a better person. I can get this done. They were always people who held themselves accountable and didn't pass the buck and say that everything that happened to them was someone else's fault. I'm wondering today if you could just pause for a few moments and from your childhood to this very moment, try to remember and think about those folks who have been a real blessing in your life, who have taught you things that were invaluable, who by observation and just hanging around them, you became a better person, a better leader. If they're still alive, why don't you give them a call, send them an email, a text, a note, just telling them how much you appreciate their leadership and the influence they were in your life. You've been listening to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, words on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. I trust today this has been like a vitamin or a supplement for your mind and heart. And wherever you receive podcasts from, would you please subscribe to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, leave a rating and a brief written review. Remember, my leadership friend, you are doing better than you think you are. You really, truly are. And until next time, this is Dr. Ron saying, have a great and blessed day.